Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mentally Strong Mums. This one is a good one. I love this one because it's so relevant in today and it has to do with AI. So, AI can look like ChatGPT, it can look like Gemini, it can also look like there's an app called Otter, which I know that people have used as well. Otter is essentially, which I've heard that people can record conversations, whether the other person is aware of it or not. And then you're able to then have interactive conversations with the app about the conversation to be able to understand either what's happened or evidence of what's happened. So AI, especially with everything, is can be very, very useful. But we want to talk today about sometimes how it can cause things like psychosis or paranoias or sometimes delusions. Okay. So I, in the past, have encouraged clients or even on this podcast, listeners to use ChatGPT to help understand or educate or have a conversation with. I've even used it especially with clients to be able, if they're in a DV relationship or coercive control relationship, and they have chosen to stay in the relationship, sometimes I will then give them prompts to be able to manage or whatever that looks like. And obviously, I don't judge in any way. A woman's right to choose is her right to choose. And if she decides that in this moment, that's the best decision for her for whatever reason. It's obviously not ideal, but whatever she decides, I will always support. Okay. I will never tell anyone what to do or to leave or whatever. I just want to help you survive in whatever you're going through. Right. But I've even had clients and people that I've heard, and even some friends, where they feel so alone and isolated in their life, and the only person they get comfort from is their AI or ChatGPT. Um, so um, we then need to understand the reality of what that actually looks like when it's helpful and when it's then actually harmful. So I even saw this Instagram post or something about this woman leaving her partner because her AI told her to. And it wasn't that her AI told her to. She was from the position where she felt completely alone, she felt isolated. She obviously she also didn't have the ability to communicate. She didn't have good communication skills. She wasn't able to express her needs, all of this kind of stuff. So then she then heavily relied on ChatGPT to be able to give her validation, find negative patterns, and she went out of her way, instead of having an objective perspective or a two-sided perspective, it was just from her when she felt low and when she felt like a victim, that this other person was doing all of these negative things. And she then essentially only spoke to ChatGPT when things were bad, and how it then convinced her that her person, her or her partner, was a perpetrator. So I've even had a couple of clients that have had this similar scenario. And it's nice because I do couples work. I can be able to try to figure out if people, what people's strengths are, what people's weaknesses are, what people's attachments are, their attachment styles, if it's healthy attachment, if it's unhealthy attachment or attachment trauma. I'm also able to understand patterns of behavior and communication styles. I'm also able to try and figure out the difference between masculine and feminine, what's normal and healthy, what's toxic and unhealthy. So when I be able to work with clients, I can figure all of this out. And if someone has potential traits or negative personality traits, or there's potential DV or coercive control elements in all of this, generally I'm able to pick it up. Do you know, sometimes we're all human, things go under the radar, but the majority of the time, especially if we've had more than 3 or 4 sessions together, These things come out and you can't hide them. Maybe the first session you can hide them very well, or the second session, but eventually, if you keep on coming back and working at it, everything will come out to light. So even the couples that I've had, I understand that both parties are trying their best. There's no DV, there's nothing negative in the situation except for communication, and one party, gender neutral, then goes to confide in ChatGPT only when they feel alone or only when it's a negative situation to be able to vent. And so then it has compiled like this dossier of information about why the other person is not good for you and why they need to be able to, and then it links to things like predator behavior or toxic traits or whatever that is. And sometimes when they come in and this eventually comes to light, I then have to sit down and explain to them, listen, this isn't reality, because it's one-sided when you feel really bad. And I know this other person, gender neutral, and they're not like this at all. They're trying their best. Have you actually gone into ChatGPT to write about the beautiful things they've done or the positive things they've done or how they've never given up on you, how they're trying to evolve? And they go, no, because and you're like, there has to be an understanding that your ChatGPT or your AI, whatever that looks like, is only ever going to be biased about the things from your perception about what's happening. It's unable to give you the bigger perspective about the reality of the situation. That's why when these situations are difficult and tricky, you go to a couples therapist, because they are able to hopefully understand all the nuances of trauma, of behavior, patterns of behavior, what are healthy relationships, what are toxic, what's attachment, what's unhealthy attachment, all of these kinds of things, as opposed to you trying to figure it out on your own with ChatGPT. So it's very, very, very important. So sometimes when you're in it and you feel overwhelmed and you feel alone, it can then increase your paranoia. So it inadvertently develops a warped view of reality from using AI, especially for those vulnerable peoples or those vulnerable mums with kids, right? So especially for those people that it started as a friend or someone to talk to when they felt misunderstood or invalidated or isolated, it was then able to be there to be able to help them through all of this. But then it escalated into something where it's painted the other person unnecessarily as a perpetrator or with coercive control, and sometimes that's not the reality. So in this moment, because this is like a grey area and I'm just talking to the masses at the moment, if you're in that situation, I don't want to say that you're making all of this up. I'm trying to illustrate that sometimes this isn't the case for some people or for some women, but because of what they feed into ChatGPT, it then naturally comes to that conclusion because it doesn't have a fair and biased or bigger perspective outcome. All right. Those women that are in these DV situations or in coercive control situations, it can be a beautiful tool for them for how to survive in that relationship until they're willing to take another step. Right. And obviously, as I said before, women's choices are women's choices. I don't judge anyone's individual situation, and whatever you need, I will support you in your decisions. And when you want to be able to do something about it, I will always be here for you as well. But I would never tell a woman what to do or encourage her to leave, especially where are you going to go? Do you know? So I respect people's choices, and it's not my job to be able to tell someone what to do with their life. No way. But it's also understanding when ChatGPT can actually be a positive force in your life to get you through and to help you survive, and when sometimes it can actually be a really negative and toxic trait, and that's when you get that kind of ChatGPT Psychosis, where it feeds you or mirrors back to you all of your fears, all of your insecurities, all of your worst things, and it will just feed it to you like a mirror, right? So ChatGPT Psychosis is essentially a phenomenon where people use AI, whatever program or platform that may be, to be able to validate their distorted thinking without critical reflection. And that's what I'm talking about. So I see it how that happens in relationships, which is sometimes really sad, especially if I know both parties and I know the other party is not like that. But because of their distorted thinking, ChatGPT has mirrored their distorted thinking back to them and then convinced them that their paranoias are correct. They're cheating on me, and the other person's like, I've never done that in my life, not even with you, with no one in my life ever. I'm not that kind of, I'm not a cheater. And this person's like, but you are. And the other partner's like, but I've never done that in my entire life. I would never do that. That doesn't align with my values, ethics, and morals. I would never do it with you. I would never do it with anyone previous to you. It's just not who I am. But because ChatGPT has mirrored their distorted thinking and their paranoia, ChatGPT isn't going to be a therapist that kind of nurtures them through this, which is critical thinking. What are the facts? What are the truths? So when you think about your paranoias, where do they come from? Why do you feel this way? Oh, so this comes from insecurity from you. Where did this insecurity begin? What does that look like for you? What do you actually need in those moments? Do you understand what your emotional needs are? Because if you don't know what your needs are or your emotional needs are, how can you ask for them, right? So then we have to go back to basics. Do you know how to ask for things? Do you know how to ask for what you need? What does this look like? So then we strengthen things that way. AI isn't able to do that unless you specifically ask it to do that, right? Unless you want to, do you know what I mean? So um, it's very difficult sometimes with people with AI because it's like a echo chamber or that mirrors. And if you feel like you're in all of this isolated, sometimes it can be a high conflict relationship. Sometimes you do have really strong victim narratives, right? That will then feed everything that you're feeling. So this is me helping you understand that sometimes when you go to comfort for things like ChatGPT, we need to be able to understand how to have a balanced conversation with it, and as opposed to it just being that yes man and saying, yeah, they're cheating. Yes, they're bad. Yes, it's coercive control. Yes, you need to leave. Yes, you need to do this. This is how you do blah, 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 blah. This is how you be vindictive. And then it will justify your behavior, right? As opposed to having a balance. What's the reality of everything? So, from the neuroscience, when it's a one sided validation, right? When you get that from ChatGPT, your dopamine instantly spikes, which is that really feel good feeling, dopamine, right? Because in that moment, you feel seen and you feel validated and you feel understood. So that then creates an addiction pathway almost for you to keep on going back because in your world, that's the only thing that you're getting it from, right? So that real world lack of oxytocin, which is the love hormone, when you get cuddles or when you get affection or when you feel loved, that's then replaced by AI presence, right? So sometimes this can also feel like if this then because of these reward pathways, this can then be an addictive situation for some people. So sometimes if you are neurodiverse, ADD, ADHD, sometimes you may have that all or nothing thinking. And then it becomes this obsession where you're constantly talking to it or you're constantly trying to figure it out and you're constantly documenting. And then because it then mirrors your paranoias, that's all you see in your relationship. So even if they do something lovely or something nice or something human or something healthy, you almost ignore that because you're waiting for the bad thing to happen, or you're waiting for the way they let you down or something. And then even when they do these lovely things, you will completely ignore it because it doesn't fit with what you're going through in this moment, right? So I'll have a look. So the way that it also impacts, it can be obviously in your romantic relationship, because sometimes that's where I'm getting my love and validation from as opposed to my partner. Sometimes we might use it for parenting, especially if your children are teenagers or young adults, where you don't feel heard at home. So then you start using AI for all of your validation. And then even your teenagers with their difficult behaviors, which we're going to have an episode in a minute about teenagers and when it's difficult. So that'll be the next thing. So please listen to that. But otherwise, sometimes it can misdiagnose. So if you're a parent with a teenager and all you ever see is their turmoil because of whatever reason, we'll get into it another time in the teenage episode coming up, then you can accidentally put in all these negative things into AI, and then it will then give misdiagnoses as to your teenagers. And then that can create that paranoia and distance and accusations, as opposed to you having understanding and empathy and patience and connection and regulation with them. So it's very difficult, because then that the second path will then cause more fractures in the relationship as opposed to connections in the relationship, right? So sometimes when it comes to mental health, AI can actually create false narratives and then reinforce blame loops, or reinforce all of those really negative paranoias or delusions as well. Even if really good things are happening in my life, I can't see them because all I'm looking for. Tony Robbins always had this really interesting exercise, and he says, look at all the green things or blue things in the room. So you look green, 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 and now find the red one. And you can't, because your brain is just trained in this moment just to see all the green. So it's harder then to start to see yellow because I've trained it to see the green. It's the same with this. If you only ever see your brain, the way that it works is whatever you convince yourself it will believe, which will become your reality. So if you truly believe all these negative things, that will then become your reality, where you literally will not be able to see anything positive in your life. And then you want to get this pessimistic, negative bias reinforced to you as a form of validation from this ChatGPT. It's not going to give you anything lovely and positive because it's on that path, and that's what that psychosis is, right? So it even very difficult when it comes to conflict resolution, especially if you are an emotionally immature person and you're not aware of it because you don't have a lot of self-awareness, right? So then when you have these victim mentalities and you go into ChatGPT about someone's had an argument or fight with you, because it's only one-sided and it will only be there for your paranoias and your delusions, you will then say, I was in the right, weren't I? It's never going to say, well, you were in the wrong. It's not going to be able to genuinely give you growth and accountability unless you specifically ask for it. And sometimes if I'm in this, you're not going to ask for accountability or the bigger perspective or what have I done wrong or how can I be accountable. Sometimes these people, it's just about them and their validation and their narrative. They're not actually looking for that growth mindset, and that's when it can be dangerous and harmful. So when I use it for clients or for myself or whatever this looks like, you've got to be able to have a balanced outcome. So if you're going to use AI responsibly, right, use it as a mirror and not a megaphone, to be able to help understand what's going on, what you need, how can I improve, how can I evolve, how can I change, how can I see it from someone else's perspective, how can I ask for my needs, right? Maybe even asking it, what might the other person be feeling? So then it's almost having empathy for the other person, which can then create a conversation for you to help you get from the bigger perspective, because we need to start to understand both sides of the story before asking for advice. So even if you are in a DV relationship, even if you do give it both sides of the story, it will then say you're in a DV relationship and it will support you. But if you are not in reality in that, but all you see is the bad and you feel like the victim because you haven't learnt skills like communication, conflict resolution, you're emotionally immature, or I know that sounds really harsh, doesn't it? But this is life and this is about evolution and this is also about breaking cycles and breaking patterns. So we need to be able to grow and evolve and break these cycles. And if you haven't heard of these things before and you're triggered by this and you use AI, maybe even having this conversation with AI about it, ask it, do you think that the language or perception or whatever it is, do you think that I'm emotionally immature? What is emotional immaturity? What are conflict resolution skills? What do you think I would benefit from? How do you think I would benefit positively in this situation with my partner? How can I rebuild trust, right? If I decide to stay, how can I survive, right? So AI can support healing if you lead with honesty, right? So if you're using AI because you feel like no one else understands you, pause and maybe ask yourself, have you given others the chance to really hear you, right? I always have this thing, what I have with couples, do you need comfort, solutions, or silence? So I almost put it on a sticky note so that when couples come together and they come together, you then, and someone is about to talk about something before the other person talks, or you yourself, I need comfort, or I need solutions, or I need silence. So I need silence means I just need to vent. Don't fix it, don't solve it, don't comfort me, just vent. So then we're able to have these communication strategies with each other to be able to fix it and heal it yourself. So have you given others a chance to really hear you? Maybe start trying some of these communication strategies to give the other person the benefit of the doubt, or even learning how to articulate your own needs. But if you don't know what your needs are, you can't ask for them, right? If you've been hurt, it makes sense to protect yourself. But healing means stepping out of that echo chamber and being able to face the real world sometimes and have that beautiful growth mindset, okay? Learning how to have that grace, those boundaries, as well as that emotional maturity, which is very, very important, all right? So thank you so much. I know that was upsetting. I know a lot of that wasn't sugar-coated. But it is to really illustrate the truth and reality of what goes on. And it also, I hope, has encouraged you or empowered you to be more accountable for your own behavior and accountable for what you're actually doing and feeding in it. But obviously, if you are in those really scary, negative relationships like a DV or a coercive control, I don't want to gaslight you at all. I'm not specifically talking to you. I'm talking to those others who are in a healthy relationship. They just need therapy, or they just need to break intergenerational cycles, or they just need to understand emotional immaturity. They need to understand their own needs. Okay. So look after yourself after this session. It can be triggering for a lot of people. Obviously, I think that you're amazing and we're always here for you. Look after yourself, but start to move forward and grow from a beautiful, holistic perspective as opposed to just your own paranoias and delusions and feeling completely alone. Maybe even going to see a counselor or a therapist or something and have a conversation with them and see what they say about it all, because then maybe what they say, does that align with ChatGPT, or do they actually are invested in understanding the bigger perspective to actually help me and hold me accountable so that I can grow? But then if I do say these things and they are like, this doesn't sound healthy, we have to go into survival mode tactics for you. And even the previous session, we spoke about a safety plan. So these things should also be put in place. All right. Look after yourself. Love you, mums. Have a great time. Bye.